Hey, what's up, people? Pizowell here, and today I want to talk to you guys about 1990's Two Evil Eyes. Now, this is partially going to be a review of the movie as well as a review of this upcoming 3-disc limited edition Blu-ray release from Blue Underground. And Two Evil Eyes is notable for bringing together two masters of horror in George Romero and Dario Argento. They each wrote and directed a short film, segment, vignette, whatever you want to call it, based on stories from Edgar Allan Poe. So you can throw an Edgar Allan Poe in there and you've kind of got three masters of horror in one movie. How could it go wrong? George Romero's segment entitled Mr. Valdemar features Adrienne Barbeau as a trophy wife who, along with her boyfriend, is trying to drain her sickly husband's fortune before he shuffles off this mortal coil. The Dario Argento segment of Two Evil Eyes, which is entitled The Black Cat, stars Harvey Keitel as a crime scene photographer who really dislikes black cats and almost gets away with the perfect crime. I said almost. And the thing about Two Evil Eyes is it feels very disjointed and incomplete. It feels like it's supposed to be an anthology film. However, there's no wraparound story to kind of connect everything. And Dario Argento and George Romero are two very dissimilar filmmakers, fundamentally, when it comes to storytelling from a narrative point of view and from a visual point of view. So when you have two, roughly hour-long films wedged together from Argento and Romero, they feel very dissimilar, even though they're both based on Edgar Allan Poe stories. With George Romero's Mr. Valdemar, you have a very slow, although that's not a hit against the movie that it's slow. It's more charactery, it's more suspenseful, but it's kind of flat. And then you have Argento's segment, The Black Cat, which is Argento, which is very flashy, which is very stylish, which is very energetic, at times chaotic. And I'll give Argento this. Argento has never been a filmmaker who's known for paying a lot of attention to his characters. The character building and the character arc of Harvey Keitel's character in The Black Cat is actually handled pretty well by Dario Argento. And of course, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's Harvey freaking Keitel. So one of the big knocks on Two Evil Eyes is that the Romero story just isn't very good. Now, I don't agree with that. Yes, it is slow, but I think there's a lot to like in George Romero's Mr. Valdemar story here. I love Adrienne Barbeau. Who doesn't love Adrienne Barbeau? There's also some nice practical makeup effects and bloody special effects in that segment as well, courtesy of Tom Savini. We get kind of a cameo performance from Tom Atkins, which it's always good to see Tom Atkins really in anything. It's well made, as most of George Romero's films were, but it feels very kind of, blocky. It feels, I don't want to say kind of like a TV movie, but kind of like a TV movie. And again, then you shift over to Dario Argento's The Black Cat, and it's very Argento. And because there's no wraparound to connect the two, there's just an odd, lopsided feel to this movie. And then it just kind of ends. And yeah. So what I discovered while watching the extras on this release is that initially Two Evil Eyes, when Argento conceptualized it, he wanted there to be 4 stories, all based on Edgar Allan Poe stories. One that he would write and direct, one that Argento would write and direct, one that John Carpenter would write and direct, and one that either Stephen King or Wes Craven would write and direct. Now, In an interview on here with Argento, he mentioned Stephen King, but in another interview with somebody else, I don't recall off the top of my head, they mentioned Wes Craven. So I'm not sure, was it Craven? Was it King? I'll take Argento's word for it and say that he wanted Stephen King. Stephen King and both John Carpenter said no. So Romero and he decided to just do it themselves. There was a wraparound that was shot by Argento that was very much about, it was almost like, as someone describes on this documentary, or on an extra on this release rather, a documentary about Edgar Allan Poe, but the distributor decided to not use very much of that at all. So Two Evil Eyes is what it is. You have two masters of horror writing and directing stories from Edgar Allan Poe, another master of horror, but again, it just feels kind of disjointed. It feels incomplete. The two individual films are, I think, good in their own right, but together, it just has this, I don't know, very lopsided, very disjointed, very incomplete kind of feel. Now, that's not to say that I don't like Two Evil Eyes, because I do like both individual stories. It's just when you lump them both together, it's peanut butter and tuna fish. I love peanut butter. I love tuna fish, but I don't want to eat a peanut butter and tuna fish sandwich. If you're a fan of either or both George Romero and Dario Argento, and you've not seen Two Evil Eyes, I would still say go out, check it out. This Blu-ray release from Blue Underground would be a great way to introduce yourself to this film. If you are a fan of Two Evil Eyes, you definitely want to look into picking up this 3-disc limited edition Blu-ray release from Blue Underground and add it to your collection. First, let's check out the presentation here. On the slipcase, we've got some lenticular artwork for the film, which is very, very nice. The sleeve is reversible and features two very nice artwork designs for Two Evil Eyes. This is a 3-disc release. Disc 1 is the feature. Disc 2 are the extras, both archival and brand new. And Disc 3 is the score for the film by Pino Donaggio, which is available for the very first time on compact disc. And the soundtrack for this movie is really, really good. This release also comes with a booklet featuring a write-up about Evil Eyes entitled The Facts in the Case of Two Evil Eyes by Michael Gingold. The booklet also contains some very nice full-color images from the film and behind the scenes of Two Evil Eyes. As far as picture quality and sound quality are concerned, this release features a brand new restoration from Two Evil Eyes' original camera negative. Now, I've gotten some flack in the past for not wanting to give the picture quality of various Blu-ray releases 5 stars. I'm very picky when it comes to picture quality. The picture quality on these recent Blue Underground releases, I'm talking about Zombie, Maniac, New York Ripper, have all been phenomenal. Blue Underground have done some excellent work with the restorations of these releases, and Two Evil Eyes is absolutely no exception. This movie looks fantastic on this release. I would give it a 4.5 or a 5 out of 5. This movie looks fantastic on this release. As far as the audio quality on this release, I listened with both the DTS HD 7.1 audio and the 2.0 audio tracks. I prefer the 2.0. Now, when you get this release and you pop the disc in, it's going to be automatically set on the 7.1. Switch it to the 2.0. The 2.0 for me sounded much fuller. It sounded far more present than the 7.1. The 7.1, I had to kind of crank up my volume, the volume on my television all the way to get a nice sound. With the 2.0, I did not have to do that. So I recommend the 2.0. As far as extras are concerned, on disc 1, we get the feature presentation, we get the theatrical trailer, and we get a poster and still gallery. We also get an audio commentary with Troy Howarth, author of Murder by Design, The Unsane Cinema of Dario Argento. I listened to pretty much the entire film with Mr. Howarth's commentary. Mr. Howarth discusses the inception of Two Evil Eyes, how and why Romero and Argento selected the Poe stories for their individual parts. He discusses Romero wanting John Carpenter to direct a Poe story for the film. He goes in depth on the cast and crew, the state of the horror genre at the time, as well as the state of just the masters of horror's careers at the time. I've listened to many commentaries with Mr. Howarth. All of his commentaries are incredibly insightful, intelligent. He is a pleasure to listen to and a fountain of knowledge during these commentaries. Great commentary with Mr. Howarth for Two Evil Eyes. On Disc 2, we get Two Masters' Eyes, featuring interviews with directors Dario Argento and George Romero, effects supervisor Tom Savini, executive producer Claudio Argento, and Asia Argento. It's 29 minutes and 31 seconds in length. Argento discusses how influential Edgar Allan Poe's works were to him. He discusses the initial plans for the film, which consisted of 4 stories from 4 different directors. The 2 other directors he contacted being Stephen King and John Carpenter. However, both declined. Romero discusses how Argento contacted him and pitched him the idea for Two Evil Eyes. He discusses the Poe story that inspired his story in the film. Argento discusses his vignette, The Black Cat, and discusses shooting it in the U.S. Tom Savini discusses working with Argento and communicating with him via gestures and pantomimes. Argento is also a big fan of chicken wings, I discovered during this featurette. A 14-year-old Asia Argento is briefly interviewed from the set of The Black Cat. Savini discusses the effects in the film. Argento discusses working with Harvey Keitel. They discuss the movie's weak distribution and Romero having no control over his film in post-production and more. Very nice making of for Two Evil Eyes. Next up, we have Savini's Effects, a behind-the-scenes look at the film's special makeup effects. It's 12 minutes and 8 seconds in length. Savini discusses the different special effects that he created and supervised in the film, including behind-the-scenes footage shot on the set. Very nice. Next up, we get At Home with Tom Savini. It's 15 minutes and 42 seconds in length, in which Savini guides us through a tour of his home, including his home video collection, Elle the Monkey from Monkey Shines, his sword collection, his collection of background zombie masks from Day of the Dead, various other masks he's created. He discusses the remake of Night of the Living Dead, which at the time was in pre-production, and more. Next up, we get Adrienne Barbeau on George Romero. It's 4 minutes and 35 seconds in length. Ms. Barbeau discusses the amount of trust she has in Romero as a filmmaker. She discusses working with Romero on Creepshow. She discusses her enjoyment of Dawn of the Dead, but says that Night Riders is her favorite Romero movie. And more. Next up, we get Before I Wake, an interview with star Rami Zada. It's 14 minutes and 3 seconds in length. Mr. Zada discusses getting asked by Romero to be in Mr. Valdemar. He discusses working with Romero and Adrienne Barbeau. He discusses shooting in Pittsburgh. He discusses working with Tom Savini and his crew. He discusses his character's death scene and how terrifying and difficult it was to shoot, and more. Next, we get Behind the Wall, an interview with star Madeline Potter. It's 16 minutes and 9 seconds in length. Ms. Potter discusses being uncomfortable with the screenplay and the horrific demise of her character initially. She discusses Argento allowing her to shop for her own wardrobe for the film. She discusses Argento as a filmmaker and his style and aesthetics. She discusses working with Harvey Keitel, her character's death, and how she's never seen the very end of the film in which her character's corpse is discovered, and more. Next up, we get One Maestro and Two Masters, an interview with composer Pino Donaggio. It's 15 minutes and 12 seconds in length. Mr. Donaggio discusses collaborating with Argento based on Argento liking his music, the music that he wrote for the film Body Double, which is a great movie. He discusses how different it is to compose music for U.S. films compared to Italian releases. He discusses the musical elements and techniques he used to give his music for Romero's film and Argento's film each a unique feel. Very nice interview with Mr. Donaggio. Next up, we get Rewriting Poe, an interview with co-writer Franco Ferrini. It's 13 minutes and 37 seconds in length. Mr. Ferrini discusses being introduced to Poe's work in school and becoming an avid reader of Poe's stories. He discusses collaborating with Argento Argento to write The Black Cat. He discusses being very impressed with Harvey Keitel's performance in the film. He discusses the TV series that Argento wanted to do based on Poe's stories, but never came to fruition, and more. Next up, we get The Cat Who Wouldn't Die, an interview with assistant director Luigi Cozzi. It's 26 minutes and 33 seconds in length. Mr. Cozzi discusses Poe's influence on horror and the giallo genres. He discusses the inception of the project that became Two Evil Eyes and how he became involved in the making of The Black Cat. He discusses working with Harvey Keitel and describes him as being difficult. He discusses being asked by Argento to control Tom Savini. He discusses Argento and Romero's relationship, which at times was rocky, but both had a great respect for one another. He discusses how the public had big expectations for Two Evil Eyes, but how the film was considered a disappointment by many, and more. Very nice interview with Mr. Cozzi. Next up, we have Two Evil Brothers, an interview with special makeup effects assistant Everett Burrell. It's 13 minutes and 52 seconds in length. Mr. Burrell discusses getting involved with Tom Savini and his crew via John Volich on the film Day of the Dead. He discusses getting hired on to work on Two Evil Eyes. He discusses the different gags they created and how they were pulled off, including an interesting run-in he had with the Pittsburgh Police Department. He discusses how passionate Argento was. He discusses how much he admired George Romero and pays tribute to his late friend John Volich, and more. Very nice interview there. Next up, we have Working with George, an interview with costume designer Barbara Anderson. It's 9 minutes and 15 seconds in length. Ms. Anderson discusses first working with Romero on Night Riders. She discusses working on Creepshow and Day of the Dead. She discusses how Argento was very spur of the moment with things on the set of Two Evil Eyes. She discusses Harvey Keitel being very difficult to work with. She discusses Timothy Hutton also being difficult to work with on the set of The Dark Calf, and more. Very nice interview with Ms. Anderson. And disc 3 is the soundtrack CD, which, as I mentioned before, the soundtrack for Two Evil Eyes is pretty freaking good. This is an absolutely loaded Blu-ray release for Two Evil Eyes from the fine folks over at Blue Underground. If you have not seen Two Evil Eyes and you're a fan of George Romero or Dario Argento, I recommend it. This Blu-ray would be a great way to introduce yourself to the film. If you're a fan of Two Evil Eyes, you definitely want to look into picking up this Blu-ray from Blue Underground and adding it to your collection. You've got a great presentation here. You've got a disc just chock full of archival and brand new extras. The 4K restoration on this release is phenomenal. The sound quality is phenomenal. The soundtrack CD is phenomenal. This is an awesome release from Blue Underground for Two Evil Eyes. I'll post a link to Blue Underground's website in the description. Go over and check them out. If you've seen Two Evil Eyes, please let me know your thoughts on it down in the comment section below. If you like this video, please leave it a thumbs up and share it on social media. If you're not following me on social media, those links are in the description and also right around here. As always, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Hope you guys out there are all having a great, safe, healthy, happy, and horror movie filled October. Take care, and until next time, peace. Join the $1 a month club and help support my channel on Patreon. Thank you to my current patrons, Kevin Smythe, B-Movie Mike, Robert Sobel, Turi Delamore, Stephen Flanagan, Lori Holt, Craig Farrand, Farron Sutton, Jeremiah Lambert, Grindhouse Grotto, Derek Jana, Demon Waffles, Simon Clark, Stone Gassman, Zachary Barton, Lauren Dixon, James Welch, Eli Geisler, Jeff Overing, Pete Toll, Kyle McGuire, Jay the Stingray, Andrew McDonald, Dave Barnes, Jonathan Lundy, Chris Gonzalez, Trenton Bowser, Jason Breitenbach, Brandon Bisdick, Steak Sauce, OG Myers, Mark Striano, Jeff Gardner, Travis Davis, The Obsoletionist, Chris Earls, Kevin Fitzpatrick, and Randall Beatty. Say hello to the internet, Jeremy.
Hello to the internet.